Is this a ghost town of the future? 15 years ago, the population figure on that small sign read 4,200. Today, as you can see, it reads 1,700. This is Roslyn, which is located in the heart of Washington State's coal fields in the foothills to the Cascade Mountains in Kittitas County. There are 226 million tons of coal hidden in the rich land surrounding Roslyn, Cle Elum, and Ronald, one of the richest natural resources in the state. Coal, one of God's gifts to man. It has taken centuries to mature, and it has played a vital role in the economic development of Washington State since the first coal shipment from Roslyn was recorded in December 1886. Since then, nearly 60 million tons of coal have been carried to the consumer all over the world from these rich mines in central Washington. There still is business being transacted in Roslyn, but not what it was 15 years ago. A changing economy and the demand for the black diamond, the bread and butter and heart and soul of Roslyn and Cle Elum and Ronald, become less and less. These people live in a constant fear that one of Washington's natural resources will lie unused. And there are still children playing on Roslyn streets, but less with each passing day. And this is Cle Elum, another ghost town of the future. One of the most vital forces in combating this disastrous situation is Ernie Miller, Cle Elum businessman and member of the Washington State Power Advisory Committee.
We're overlooking the valley in which lie the three towns, Cle Elum, Roslyn, and Ronald, where approximately 3,700 people reside. These people are dependent upon the mines for their livelihood, and the prosperity of the community is directly connected with the coal mine operations. In the distance, we can see the railroad tracks over which approximately 65 million tons of coal have been shipped in the past. This has represented millions of tons in taxes to the state of Washington.
Another is Frank Bada, General Superintendent of the Northern Pacific Coal Mine in Roslyn. Here's Bada.
We are now standing on one of the several refuse piles, or coal piles, that contains several millions of tons of coal here that can be used for a steam plant. Now in the background there is our main central coal preparation plant where all the coal is cleaned and sized at what's mined in the mine, underground. And further in the background you see the number 9 mine underground operations. And further west, about 4 miles, is the west end of the coal field where there are still further coal operations going on now. And to the north of us, on barren ground, you see where there's been considerable amount of stripping that has been done here in this field. We've stripped approximately 600,000 to 700,000 tons in this area, and there's still a considerable amount of stripping left.
And this is Ronald, which is located west of Roslyn in the scenic wonderland in the heart of the Cascade forests. The coal field in this area is comparatively small, occupying but 21 square miles. But as many as 10,000 families have lived off these mines at one time, and they have played a most prominent role in the development of the state during the past 78 years. Production reached its peak in 1920 with a record yield of 1,837,000 tons of coal. The 1956 yield was only 340,000. Generations of the same families have worked in these mines down through the years, bringing coal into your home and mine. One of these pioneer families is the Patricks. Today, Harry S. Patrick is president of the Roslyn Cascade Coal Company. The other two major coal companies in Washington are the Northern Pacific Railway Coal Division in the same area and the Palmer Coal and Coking Company in King County. And now for a few remarks, here is Mr. Patrick.
We are now located on the west end of the great Cle Elum Roslyn coal field, under which lies millions and millions of tons of coal. As I stand here also on millions of tons of coal, which also will be utilized someday for thermal generation in the plant proposed on the bottom shores of Lake Cle Elum. The reason for this proposed site is because of the vast quantities of water and cooling water which are so vitally needed and the cooling necessary in those turbines. As we stand here and view this whole area, we can visualize someday when the power must be utilized of industry located in this area and other places in this great field. From the byproducts of coal, of which we are all familiar, comes our great medicines. Also will come lampblack, creosote, and the thousands of byproducts which we all know are in that coal. Also today we are told that extensive research is being made for the use of coal from these very piles upon which I am standing for fertilizers. In this whole area, someday the younger generation coming will realize what this means. Now, we are very privileged to be in an area which holds this great future. And it's so important during the interim to keep these mines going, to keep employment, to keep our families, to keep everything going, to make this great economy of the state of Washington secure.
In spite of the bleak outlook and sagging demand for coal, there still are a handful of miners who spend their days far beneath the surface of the earth in coal's natural habitat. Every day they leave their families to work their natural trade, to mine the inexhaustible reserves of coal buried in the ground. These are men hardy of spirit and body who typify the more than half a century of history in these coal-laden hills. Through their efforts, coal in its many forms winds up every day in your home, in the factory, and in many other diversified business establishments throughout the state. Where will they be tomorrow if these vast rich fields lie barren and unused? Well, even today, the systems of mining have not changed greatly from the ones used by the first miners in 1886. But the methods of extracting the coal from its natural home have changed considerably. In the early days, a brawny individual swung a heavy pick to loosen the coal. Today, we have these lightning-fast undercutting machines. The continuous mining equipment quickly digs the coal out of the vein and puts it upon a conveyor belt. Millions of pieces of coal burst from the earth with every motion of this equipment. At first, coal was hauled from the mine by using hemp rope. Later came the mule and the mule skinner. They were replaced by the locomotive. This is coal, rich in tradition and wealthy beyond dreams with potential. Vast untouched mines still lie in the evergreen Cascade Mountains. But what will happen to all of this potential? The competition of other fuels, gas and oil, grows daily. The mighty power-packed black diamond faces a bleak future, unharvested and unused beneath the ground surface. Governor Albert D. Rossellini has asked agencies across the state to use Washington mined coal and announced that a committee of State Department heads has been working on the project. Businessmen throughout the state have voiced their concern over the desperate future of one of the state's first natural resources. The economy of the entire state would be affected if these mines were operating at full capacity, producing coal at prices competitive with other fuels. It would mean jobs for thousands of men and food and clothing for their families. More and more byproducts could then be produced at cheaper costs. The future economy of the state depends upon more and more usages of products and Washington state industries. Yes, this is progress. But mines lying idle rich with one of God's natural gifts to man is not a natural situation. Progress and productivity. It's a beautiful scene when empty cars pour into the veins 1 minute, are filled with rich ore far beneath the ground, and emerge laden with coal the next minute. 3 communities, Roslyn and Cle Elum and Ronald, live from the fruits of this coal. There aren't many ghost towns in Washington, but as Kittitas County businessmen view the half-hearted mining efforts in these wealthy fields, their minds contain one thought. Will there be 3 more ghost towns in Washington state within the near future? Well, many of them recall the days when 3 times as many men strained feverishly every day in these mines. They remember when every business flourished in these communities. They remember when the eyes of all of the surrounding communities in Washington looked to them for more and more coal. And as the miners emerge from the huge veins at dusk and start for their homes, their minds too ponder the big question, what is the answer? The answer is a simple one, the never-ending battle to produce less expensive power in quantities sufficient to serve Washington State. Rail cars chock full of precious ore could serve as a huge power plant. And modern-day surveys show that coal-burning steam plants can produce electricity on a continuing basis at least as economical as power produced by hydroelectric plants. It's being done today, for example, in the Tennessee Valley. And it's for this reason that the state legislature authorized the construction of a steam plant in Kittitas County. Use of Lake Cle Elum, which borders the coal fields, to supply water for this steam plant recently was authorized by the Bureau of Reclamation. The Bureau surveys indicated that such an activity would not injure sports fishing on the lake to any degree. Such a steam plant would make much more power available for the entire Northwest, as products of the plant would feed the Northwest power pool. Wintertime power shortages, which annually threaten to strangle the entire territory, would become a thing of the past. Here's another man, James McCain, Chief Electrician for Northern Pacific.
Standing here on a coal pile, we can see the proximity of where coal will go out and form electricity. Looking in this direction, we see the Puget Sound power and light lines that are now transporting power to the coast. And in the near future, coal will take the place of what is now supplying the power for those lines.
These graphic pictures show you the answer. These are illustrations of several coal-burning steam plants operated by the Tennessee Valley Authority. These plants produce power less expensive than those produced today by water companies. 80% of the power produced in Tennessee Valley is produced by steam plants. This is the type of a plant which one day may rise at the site of the Roslyn, Cle Elum, Ronald coal fields. This is the type of plant needed urgently in Washington State. It would produce economical power and would save an industry dedicated to one of the state's natural resources. It would put more wind to work. It would mean the state money would be spent wisely and economically to Washington concerns. Coleman Patrick feels that everyone in the state would be interested in this project because it would mean cheap, firm power for power users in Washington. And ultimately, these savings would be passed on to the consumer. A steam plant such as this one would help attract new industry to the area. But it would take time. Experts estimate that construction of this plant would require from 36 to 40 months. The first unit would be 321,000 kilowatts, with final plans encompassing 624,000 kilowatts. Surveys show that this coal-burning steam plant would lower the cost of producing electricity between 2.1 and 2.5 mils per kilowatt, and would produce 3 times as much electricity at double the efficiency in the same physical space as the 30-year-old old-fashioned steam plants. But the ball is rolling in the right direction. At a recent meeting in Olympia, the Washington State Power Advisory Committee, spearheaded by one of its members from Cle Elum, Ernie Miller, urged that all feasibility studies preparatory to the construction of such a plant in Kittitas County be completed. This simply means that the fate of a steam plant as well as the coal mines in that area will be determined within the near future. Yes, power is the future, and the development of power should be allied with the coal industry to serve better this expanding territory.